Hello and welcome to a brand new YouTube channel called LateNightLili with me, your host, Ruby Lily. On this channel we're going to be talking about true crime, conspiracy theories, internet debriefs and much more. So if you're into that, you're in the right place. I want to preface by saying that this video is going to contain a lot of sensitive topics, so please don't force yourself to watch something if it makes you uncomfortable. I'll see you in the next one. Also, if you have any cases you want me to cover in the future, please leave them in the comments and I'll try my best. But without further ado, let's get started. Hello Kitty. An iconic Japanese cat character that was first created in 1974 by the Japanese illustrator called Yuko Shimizu. Apologies if I said that wrong. But Hello Kitty, along with the other characters in the Sanrio franchise, are so popular today, globally even, and people like myself buy their merch and consume their media. I literally have her behind me in this video right now, but how is it that something so childlike and innocent becomes something so horrifying? This case is known globally, and for a reason. I've known about this case for years, and I've researched so many different true crime cases, but this one always sticks with me. The victim in this case, I believe, was just very unlucky, and the world was out to get her, let's say, and she truly did not deserve anything that happened to her within this crime. The ending of this crime is bizarre, to say the least, but it's so fascinating at the same time. So let's get into the Hello Kitty murder case. I'm going to start by saying I have notes down here, so if I'm looking down, I'm looking at my notes. But the victim of our case is a woman by the name of Fan Manyi, who was born in 1976 in Shenzhen, China. Pronunciation again, apologies. But she grew up without a family and was very early on placed into an all-girls orphanage. But at the age of 15, she was kicked out because of age restrictions. What's that supposed to mean? She was left homeless with very little money and had to fend completely by herself from a very young age, which is very traumatizing, if you ask me. But at the age of 21, she decides to become a prostitute to try and get some extra cash. During this time, she becomes addicted to drugs and she meets a fellow drug addict who is also one of her clients. This client was a man by the name of Ng Chi-yun, and they later married in 1996. She then fell pregnant with their son and gave birth in November 1998, which was only 5 months before her murder. 5 months. Fan's husband was often described as being abusive. Neighbours who lived in the same apartment building as them often said that they would report hearing them scream in the middle of the night and would always hear their newborn son crying all the time. So from outsiders, their relationship definitely did not look good. After giving birth to her son, Fan wanted to turn her life around to protect him and make him have a better life. So she quit drugs, she left her husband, and she took up a new job at a nightclub as a hostess called the Empress Karaoke Club. As much as she wanted to protect her son, she was now on a much lower income, so it was very hard to get the money to live. Now, a very important part of our story is a group called the Woshing-Wo Triad. The Woshing-Wo Triad was one of the oldest Wo group triad societies and the triad with the longest history in Hong Kong after being established in 1930. According to Hong Kong police, the triad is a gang involved in extortion, drug trafficking, gambling and prostitution. Chan Man Lok was a 33-year-old member of this gang who had been previously convicted for drug trafficking. Chan was a regular of Fan's at the brothel, but in early 1999, Fan took Chan's wallet. Fan taking his wallet, we could say, is probably the stimulus for this whole story. The wallet contained around 4,000 Hong Kong dollars, which is roughly around 500 US dollars. But when Chan realised that his wallet had gone missing, he found Fan and demanded that he give back the money. But along with that, he wanted an extra 10,000 Hong Kong dollars to act as an apology. Obviously, Fan did not have this money. She did not have enough money to really feed herself and her son, so where Chan thought she was going to get this money from, I don't know. She apologised profusely to Chan and begged him to drop it. She gave the money back immediately that she'd taken from his wallet, but he would not budge. She asked him politely if she could have some extra time to try and get the money, and he agreed. Despite agreeing, Chan was running out of patience, so he decided to take things into his own hands. So on the 17th of March, 1999, Fan Man-yi was abducted by Chan and 3 others from her apartment in Liu Estate. 2 men and 1 woman. One of the 3 who joined Chan in this was 14-year-old Lao Ming Fong. Fong had the alias Ah Fong and was forced in this situation because Chan had groomed her, and it's unclear whether she was forced into this or not. The other 2 were men by the names Lung Wai Lun and Lung Xing Cho, and their aliases were Gangster 1 and Gangster 2. For consistency, I'm going to use their aliases for the rest of the video. The 4 of them took Fan to an apartment, and she ended up being there for over a month. Originally, Chan had intended to use Fan and make money off of her by letting other men use her. This apartment was rented by Chan. He did not own it. Instead, it was owned by 2 people that are referred to as Ah Sam and Ah Kao, and we do not know if they were involved in this crime or anyway, or if they knew about it, but most sources say that they did not know. Now, in terms of Fan's imprisonment, she was tortured horrendously. At the beginning, she was just mainly SA'd by her kidnappers and other men who came in and out of the apartment and paid Chan to let them do that to her. But slowly the gang became more and more brave, let's say, and they came up with new torture methods that they could do to Fan. She was beaten with metal bars and sometimes even beaten while upside down and used almost as a human punching bag just to relieve their anger. On one occasion, Fan was kicked in the head almost 50 times. I hope none of you have ever been kicked in the head before, but that's an unbearable amount of pain. With that much torture, your face would be bruised and swollen, and your whole body would be covered in fractures, and it would just be horrendous. Her kidnappers took it in turns to beat her and SA her, and Ah Fong, well, she just kind of stood in the corner and watched, until one day Chan eventually convinced her to join in, and she also beat Fan. Fan would often be left alone for hours, whether that was while her kidnappers were away sleeping in their actual homes or whether they were just out and about doing some errands for the day, but she would either be tied upside down or tied to the bed. Being left alone for that long in that much pain, it would definitely make you think a lot of things. It would make you think about, oh, I hope somebody has realised I'm missing. Oh, I hope somebody's going to burst into that door. But you would also lose hope at the same time if you were covered in that many injuries. The torture was genuinely unbearable, and it's something that no person should ever go through. But to add to the injuries, her kidnappers put spices in her wounds to make them hurt more, and they burned her hands and feet and legs with candle wax to try and stop her from running away. Like she could anyway with the amount of injuries she had, but they still did it. They would often think of new torture methods that got worse and worse every time. And they also made Fan smile and say that she loved being beaten. If she didn't, she would then be beaten further. Sometimes Fan's injuries were so bad that she physically could not smile or speak, so you can only imagine because of that, she got beaten more and more and more, until eventually her body went into shock and she passed away. We don't know when exactly she passed away, but it's believed she passed between the 14th and 15th of April 1999, but we are unsure when. When Fan died, her captors were out. It's unclear whether she died during the night or during the day, but when they did return, they panicked. They did not intend to kill Fan. They were just trying to keep her captive and beat her, and they even had plans to keep her longer. Which is stupid, if you ask me, because any normal human being would die if they had that many injuries. It's a miracle that Fan lived as long as she did, but they did not intend to kill her, so they did in fact panic. Upon discovering Fan's body, Chan and the other captors dismembered her. They put some of her organs in Ziploc bags and put them in the fridge, and then the rest of her body was put into a cooking pot until nothing was left apart from her skull. Now, this detail is something that really gets me. So not only did they put her body in a cooking pot and boil it until there was nothing left apart from the skull, the pot they used was the same cooking pot that they used to make food when they were there. Some sources even say the cooking pot they used to boil Fan's body was the same pot that they used that night to make their dinner. Which is... who does that? Who does that? You think they would buy a new pot, but no. They just casually eat dinner out of it the next day. Ew. The bits of Fan's body that they did not want to keep, they threw away in trash chutes and dumpsters, but this is where the case gets its name. Now, the apartment, it had a big shelf that had nothing but Hello Kitty plushies on it. Quite a few, I don't really know how many, but there was quite a few Hello Kitty plushies on there. So, Chan took one off the shelf, a larger one, and it was a mermaid Hello Kitty plushie with a little blue tail and a Hello Kitty head. Chan cut it open, took the stuffing out, and he put Fan's skull inside. He then sewed it back up and just placed it back on the shelf, like nothing had happened. Fan's skull was inside a Hello Kitty plush on the shelf. Now, this is definitely one of the most creative ways I've heard of somebody trying to hide a body, but it's just so silly. It's just really silly. Now, this Hello Kitty skull doll just sat on the shelf there for 10 days until eventually the police found it in the apartment. Chan Man Lok, Lung Wai Lun and Lung Sing Cho, they thought they'd gotten away with it. They thought, oh yes, we're these amazing gangsters and we've just killed a woman and nobody's going to ever know. But little did they know the person that was going to give them away was sat right next to them. 14-year-old Lau Ming Fong, or Ah Fong, when she was out one day, she went to the police and she told them everything. She told them about Fan's imprisonment for over a month, and she even spilled the beans on how she was boiled in a cooking pot, and she told them everything. Genuinely everything. I guess she must have felt guilty about her involvement, but she told them. Ah Fong led police to the scene on the 24th of May 1999, where 3 police officers stormed into the apartment and they discovered Fan's remains in the Hello Kitty doll, along with other parts in the fridge and in the trash dump. At this time, Chan was living in a different apartment that he actually owned with his wife and his newborn child. His newborn child. It's crazy to me when I think about that he is a father and a husband and he still did this. He left Fan's newborn son alone because of his crime. And he has a child of his own. And also imagine being his wife. We don't really know if she knew about it or not, but if she didn't, that must have been a really bad day. Chan also is not his real name. His real name is Se Pui Ling. Sorry if I've said that wrong, but that's his real name. Chan Man Lok is not his real name. It must have just been an alias because of the gang. His apartment was then raided by SWAT officers in the early morning of the 28th of May, 4 days after the original discovery. Chan was arrested but then released because they had lack of evidence of him being involved. What? Chan then fled to mainland China, but luckily he was found by police again on the 14th of February 2000 after irregularities were found in his passport. This was almost a year after he was originally arrested, but he was then sent back to Hong Kong and finally sent to trial on the 17th of February. On the 7th of December 2000, the 3 men were convicted of manslaughter. Not murder, not kidnapping, manslaughter. So the jury basically ruled that the remains were not sufficient enough to show whether Fan was murdered or died from a drug overdose. How she would have died from a drug overdose, I don't know, but the jury couldn't rule that the men intended to kill Fan, but they did rule that she died because of their abuse, which is, I guess, a little win in the whole picture. Lau, known as Ah Fong, she testified at the trial in exchange for immunity, and she did not get convicted for anything because then again she was also groomed and forced into doing this by Chan, so she is a victim in her own sense as well. But Chan's wife testified at the trial as well, along with Fan's husband and Anne, and that must have been very traumatising for them, and my heart is with the families of the victim. The 3 men were then luckily sentenced to life in prison with a possibility of parole. Now, I wish I could say that this story has a happy ending, but it really doesn't. And the criminals, their sentence, it was okay. It could have been worse, it could have been better, but they knew what they were doing. They knew what they were doing. The apartment building where Fan was murdered has now been turned into a hotel. It was renovated in 2016 and it's still open today. Fan's necklace was also found in the fridge of the apartment, and it was given to her son so he has something to remember her by, even though she died when he was still a newborn. The global publicity of this case has resulted in 2 films to be created, actually. One called Human Pork Chop. Okay. And the other is called There Is a Secret in My Soup. And finally, one of the perpetrators, Lung Xingqiu, he actually managed to reduce his sentence from life to 18 years on appeal in March 2004. He was released from prison in April 2014. However, Lung was then arrested and sentenced to jail once again for 12 months in August 2022, which is very recently, for sexually assaulting a 10-year-old girl. I guess that just proves that once you're a monster, you're always a monster. Well, that pretty much sums up my first video of the Hello Kitty murder. I hope you've enjoyed, and once again, if you have any cases you want me to cover in the future, please leave them in the comments and I'll try my best to research and make a video for them in the future. I really hope you've enjoyed my video. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. This is LateNightLili, signing out.